Dinner was still unfinished when Grace Ellwood vanished from the quiet Lake Murray Manor neighborhood in La Mesa, San Diego, where 56,000 residents still believe that bad things only happen somewhere else. June 14th passed with the characteristic dry heat of Southern California, and no one in the neighborhood suspected that the calm was about to be shattered. At 6:03 p.m., Grace's neighbor, Mrs. Lorraine McCaffrey, waved from her kitchen doorway when she saw the 34-year-old woman walk across the small yard separating their two houses, carrying the cream-colored tote bag that Grace always took with her when going out. She only said she would step out for a bit before dinner, her neatly tied brown hair swaying slightly in the hot June breeze. Mrs. Lorraine watched Grace's figure disappear behind the half-closed garage door frame, the late afternoon sunlight falling across her shoulders in a thin golden streak before vanishing. What happened in the following 91 minutes would haunt La Mesa for more than a decade. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. The La Mesa residential area, east of San Diego, stretches along the quiet roads surrounding Lake Murray, where single-story homes are interspersed with small yards and sunny front porches. This is an area with a stable rhythm of life, where residents know each other's faces, and any change in daily routines is easily noticed. Grace Ellwood, 36 years old, lived with her husband Daniel Ellwood in a ranch-style house on Valley Garden Road. Grace worked in healthcare data analysis, often working from home early in the week. Her routine was to wake up early, focus on work until the afternoon, then spend a few hours tending the garden or walking around the neighborhood. Neighbors described Grace as disciplined, with a regular schedule, and rarely leaving without letting someone know in advance. September 14, 2011, began like any other day. Grace logged into her work computer at 8 a.m. Sent some internal reports at 11 a.m., took a short lunch break around 12:30. By 3:15 p.m., a neighbor walking their dog saw Grace watering plants on the front porch, and that was confirmed as the last time anyone outside the family saw her. Daniel said that when he returned home from the office around 5:45 p.m., Grace was still in the kitchen, cleaning up after an early dinner. He recounted that they exchanged a few short words, and according to Daniel, Grace said she was preparing to take a walk around the neighborhood as usual when the weather cooled. Daniel stated that he showered, changed clothes, and didn't notice the exact moment Grace left the house, only remembering the last time he saw his wife was around 6:15 p.m. By nearly 7 p.m., Daniel realized Grace hadn't returned but didn't think anything was wrong until it grew dark and his calls to her went unanswered. Text messages sent showed as undelivered, calls went straight to voicemail. Anxiety rose as the clock passed 8:30 p.m., and Grace still hadn't appeared. Daniel walked around the nearby streets, stopped by the park south of Lake Murray, asked a few neighbors, but no one had seen Grace after 5 p.m. Grace not informing anyone, not returning, and not responding to contact was completely contrary to her usual habits. When the clock hit 9 p.m., all self-search efforts in the surrounding area yielded no results, and the growing unease gradually overpowered Daniel's initial assumption that Grace had simply come back late. At 9:20 p.m., he returned to the house on Valley Garden Road, picked up the landline, and called 911, officially reporting his wife missing in a state of both confusion and inability to explain what had happened. About 15 minutes after the call, two patrol officers from the La Mesa Police Department arrived at the scene, immediately noting Daniel's obvious tension when asked to recount the evening's events. The officers proceeded to verify initial information. Grace had not appeared according to her usual schedule, had not taken her wallet or backup phone, had not responded to any calls, and was believed to have left the house during a period with no direct witnesses. After entering the home, the officers walked through the main living areas, noting that the front door was normally locked, the back door in the kitchen was not fully locked, but showed no signs of forced entry or tampering. The kitchen light was still on. The sink had no pile of dishes, and Grace's computer on the living room desk was logged in, but with no tasks running. They found no signs of a struggle, no overturned items, and no obvious disturbance, suggesting the presence of a stranger. Grace's cell phone was found on the table next to the sofa, screen off, no new messages. This was recorded as inconsistent with habits, based on Daniel's information that Grace usually took her phone with her whenever she went out. When asked to recount the entire afternoon, Daniel detailed arriving home around 5:45 p.m., seeing Grace cleaning the kitchen, and remembering that his wife had mentioned going for a walk because the weather was cool. He emphasized that he didn't hear the door close when Grace left, didn't know what she took with her, and didn't think she would go far. The officers asked about the timing, and Daniel repeated that the last time he saw Grace was around 6:15 p.m., after which he showered and went to the study for a while, before coming down to check and realizing his wife hadn't returned. This statement was recorded in the initial report, with a note that Daniel was not certain of every minute, but believed that time frame to be accurate. The closest neighbor, Mrs. Conway at number 214, was quickly interviewed afterward and confirmed seeing Grace watering plants in the afternoon, around 3:30, but not seeing her leave the house between 5 and 7 p.m., even though her window faced directly toward the main road. Another neighbor, Mr. Ramirez, said he also walked during that time frame and didn't encounter anyone matching Grace on the route where she was usually seen walking. From these statements, police constructed a rough timeline: 3:15 p.m., Grace seen in the yard; 5:45 p.m., Daniel arrives home; 6:15 p.m., Grace possibly left the house per Daniel. 7 p.m. onward, no one saw or contacted Grace. 9:20 p.m. Daniel called 911. This timeline was marked as not independently verified and required cross-checking with other data sources when possible. From the initial data, police determined that Grace had left the house without taking her phone, wallet, or any means of transportation, and there were no reports of unusual noise, arguments, or the appearance of strangers in the area at the relevant time. Before there was clear evidence of the nature of the case, the patrol team agreed to establish an initial search radius of about 1 mile around the house on Valley Garden, including neighborhood streets, the green area behind the row of houses, a trail segment adjacent to the park, and the edge bordering Lake Murray. A quick map of the area was marked based on local layout, prioritizing directions Grace was likely to walk based on her habits. The end-of-shift report clearly noted, missing person status undetermined, no direct evidence of criminal activity, field search to be deployed and information collection to continue. Immediately after establishing the 1-mile radius, the La Mesa Police Department search team was mobilized to the scene, beginning with a systematic sweep of all neighborhood streets connecting from Grace's house to the nearest public access points, while quickly dividing into groups. One team handling the front of the residential area, one team covering the rear line of houses, and one K-9 team specifically assigned to move along low traffic paths. The first area swept was the street in front of the house, extending south about 300 meters to the first intersection. Officers used high-powered flashlights to scan every dark spot between parked cars and gaps between houses. No clear objects found, except a few residents' trash bags left out earlier than usual. The K-9 team brought a search dog trained to find living people based on the scent from Grace's clothing provided by Daniel. They started from the front porch, let the dog sniff the sample, then proceeded along the east sidewalk of the street. The dog pulled strongly for a short distance, but lost the trail right at the corner turn between Valley Garden and the side road leading to the parking area, forcing the handler to backtrack and try a second time at the backyard. Meanwhile, the second team approached via the side of the house, entering the green area behind the row of houses where there were low bushes and an old wooden fence section. They used flashlights to scan close to the ground, checking for footprints, disturbed soil, flattened grass, or any scratches on the fence that might indicate someone passing through, but only noted a few broken grass sections, likely from rabbits or cats. nothing matching adult human foot size. The K9 team, after moving to the backyard, let the dog scent again and noted the dog approached the western fence area of the house, but failed to establish a continuing direction. The report stated, scent response unstable, no continuous trail established. The third team by then began expanding into the alley behind the row of houses, which was a service lane for garbage trucks and utility workers. They traveled about 200 meters along the alley, shining into every wall crevice and trash bin, noting 3 torn trash bags from animals, a few pieces of fabric of unknown origin, and a crushed soda can, all photographed for records, but not collected as they lacked direct relevance to Grace. A small group was also sent to the small park area at the end of the street, a common walking spot for residents. They split into 2 directions, one along the paved path, one into the dense tree area. Under the first bench, they found a black hair elastic, an item so common it couldn't yet be confirmed as related, but its location was still marked. Along the parkside path, no jacket, water bottle, earbuds, or any item matching Daniel's description was found. The team sweeping the western terrain then moved to check the dirt slope connecting to the back houses area, as it was a shortcut sometimes used by residents. The ground showed fresh footprints, but no distinctive foot or shoe shapes, likely from locals passing earlier. When the K9 was brought to this area, the response remained faint. The dog only sniffed around a bush, then moved on, unable to follow a clear direction. The search team leader noted in the field report that no evidence suggests Grace moved out of the area on foot after 6 p.m., based on no personal items found, no additional witnesses, and no continuous scent trail from the K9. Police also drove along the looping roads around the neighborhood, shining lights into empty lots, parking areas, and spots near the school fence, but no unusual objects were detected. At the nearest Lake Murray edge, they only observed from a distance as the initial search radius didn't yet require checking water lines or large parks. However, no flashlight reflections indicated any suspicious objects. When compiling the data, only 3 types of physical traces were recorded: an unidentified black hair elastic in the park, lightly broken grass behind the garden, and a few unrelated debris pieces in the alley. The technical report assessed all as no investigative value due to no direct connection to Grace, uncertain timing of appearance, and context not fitting the missing timeline. Based on the entire 1-mile observation, the command team gave a preliminary assessment that if Grace left on foot, there would likely be a witness, resident camera, or a clear physical trace. But none of the 3 appeared. This made it necessary to consider the possibility that she left the area in a direction outside usual walking routes or by other means. However, with no evidence yet of criminal activity or third-party involvement, the conclusion remained at undetermined, and the search team was ordered to temporarily conclude the close radius sweep phase pending further expansion directives. Right after completing the 1-mile radius sweep with no valuable traces found, the La Mesa PD on-scene commander approved expanding the search radius to the 2 largest and closest major terrain areas, Lake Murray Park and Mission Trails Regional Park, both within a 5-10-minute drive from Valley Garden, and both featuring extensive trail systems, many turns, and dense enough vegetation to conceal someone in distress, or an individual removing a person without notice. The search team was divided into 4 groups, 2 handling the lakeside areas, 1 entering the southeast edge of Mission Trails, and 1 coordinating with a San Diego County Sheriff helicopter for aerial observation. In parallel, a semi-professional drone unit was deployed, but limited by civilian flight regulations near residential and preserve areas, allowing operation only along the outer perimeter without penetrating deep into tree canopies. Lake Murray Park was prioritized for survey, first as it was a familiar walking spot for La Mesa residents, with concrete paved paths, benches, open lakeside areas, and some low tree zones. Officers started from the main parking lot, following the lake loop, scanning each segment with high-powered flashlights and headlamps, paying special attention to spots 10-20 meters off the main path where tall weeds grew. These observation points showed no clothing, personal items, drag marks, or unusual shoe prints, matching Grace's description. Park information boards also recorded no emergency incidents on the evening Grace went missing. Meanwhile, the helicopter unit flew along two main axes, using thermal cameras to detect human body heat signatures, but at permitted altitude, they only picked up small wildlife and a few night fishermen, with no signals suggesting a victim location. After more than 2 hours sweeping around the lake, the team leader noted no clear connecting traces. At Mission Trails Regional Park, a much larger area, including low forest patches, earthen hills, and long trail systems, the search was conducted systematically starting from the southern edge area, with a small parking lot near Jackson Drive. Officers split into pairs, traveling along main trails like Big Rock Trail, Oak Canyon, and Grasslands Loop, recording time, distance, and any anomalies, such as clothing, unusual trash, or fresh shoe prints, on still soft soil. However, the usual volume of daytime hikers caused overlapping footprints, making timing and relevance hard to determine, so only unusually large or deep prints were photographed and marked, but still didn't match Grace's stride size or any description Daniel provided. In the northern low tree areas where light was dim and canopies obscured, the search became more manual. Officers used long poles to part bushes, bent to peer under foliage, checked soil for disturbance or recent digging. These observations also showed no locations with fresh dirt, ash, or recently filled small pits. The drone, flying along the park boundary, recorded heat reflections from small animals, but no human-sized shapes. After more than 4 hours of searching, the command team paused to reassess data, concluding that there were no signs Grace had ever walked into either of these areas. No witnesses, no park cameras recording, no physical traces left. The map was updated, marking areas as reasonably ruled out. In a quick on-site meeting, the commander posed the key question: if Grace left on foot, one of three elements should exist: traces, witnesses, or dropped items. But all three were absent. At the same time, the K-9's failure to establish a continuous scent trail further reinforced the possibility that Grace did not walk far from home, or had left the area by vehicle very early after the last time Daniel saw her. The possibility of Grace voluntarily leaving far on foot was reevaluated based on terrain features and timing. Walking from the house to Lake Murray would take at least 25-30 minutes, while the window, when Daniel wasn't watching his wife, was only 20-30 minutes before he began worrying and calling her. Based on this calculation, police deemed it not feasible for Grace to reach distant points in such a short time without being seen. With Mission Trails even farther, the possibility of Grace walking there on her own before going missing was completely ruled out. From this, the search and on-scene coordination team reached a preliminary conclusion: no evidence supports the hypothesis that the victim left the area on foot. The possibility that the victim left the origin location by vehicle, voluntarily or under intervention, needs to be considered. This viewpoint was finalized in the end-of-day report, marking a shift in focus from terrain search to analyzing the possibility that the victim was removed from the area by vehicle in the short time after leaving the house or just before Daniel realized Grace was missing. Right after preliminarily concluding that Grace was unlikely to have left the house on foot, La Mesa PD shifted focus to collecting image data within a 1-2 mile radius to identify all vehicles entering or leaving the area during the time frame from 5:45 to 9:20 p.m. The period from when Daniel returned home until he reported her missing. Officers were assigned to review all residential cameras registered with the Neighborhood Watch Video Network program, while also going door-to-door in the Valley Garden neighborhood and 3 adjacent streets to request footage from front door cameras, doorbell cameras, garage cameras, and private security devices. Some homes had no cameras or non-functional ones, but in total more than 40 video sources were collected, including the camera from a veterinary clinic 1 block away and a church camera near Lake Murray Boulevard. These devices were transported to the police department's digital forensics lab for review of the relevant time frames. Once the data was uploaded to the system, investigators sorted it by route: Valley Garden, the two dead-end branches behind it, the road leading to the small commercial area to the north, and the exit toward Lake Murray. During the 6 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. window, the time frame Daniels stated, Grace may have left the house. Cameras in front of houses #221, #233, and #249 recorded no woman matching Grace's description, leaving the house, walking on the sidewalk, or crossing the street. The camera from house #233, with a wide angle covering the shared walkway, only captured 2 people walking dogs and 1 jogger, none matching the description. A front door camera on the southern side street recorded a woman in a black jacket passing by at 6:42 p.m., but when the frame was enlarged and compared to photos of Grace, investigators confirmed it was a neighbor living 3 houses away. Data from the church camera, though over a mile away, was used as a supplementary reference due to higher foot traffic between 6 o'clock and 8 p.m. Only 12 people appeared in the footage, none matching the victim's description. Preliminary conclusion: no footage recorded the victim leaving the residential area during the suspected time frame. When vehicle data was analyzed, investigators compiled a table of all vehicles passing through Valley Garden between 5:30 and 7:30 p.m. There were a total of 23 vehicles, 17 belonged to residents, 4 were delivery vehicles, and 2 were non-resident vehicles that only passed through the main road without stopping at any house. No vehicles stopped near Grace's house during the time frame Daniel described. However, when analysis was expanded to the neighborhood exit camera, specifically a private garage camera, at house #207 facing the shared road, investigators discovered Daniel's vehicle appearing at 6:32 p.m., traveling about 40-50 meters out of the neighborhood, then returning just 2 minutes later. This contradicted Daniel's initial statement that he remained at home continuously from arrival until calling 911. When re-interviewed by phone during the video analysis, Daniel stated that he may have driven out to check the route Grace might have walked, but he had not mentioned this detail earlier. Investigators noted the explanation but flagged it as inconsistent with initial statement. Another key point was that the timing of Daniel's vehicle leaving fell within the period he claimed he was showering or working upstairs, making the timeline uncertain. Meanwhile, the camera at house #215, positioned diagonally across from Grace's house, recorded lights in Grace's house turning on and off between 6:20 and 6:28 p.m. Although it could not prove who operated them due to closed curtains, this was noted as light fluctuation coinciding with Daniel's vehicle movement. To build a fuller picture, police re-interviewed neighbors who had been spoken to on the first night, this time probing deeper about sounds, lights, and unusual movements. Conway stated she saw headlights reflecting on her window when a vehicle passed around, close to 6:30. But she was unsure which house it related to. Mr. Ramirez stated that while bringing his dog inside around 6:40, he heard a loud engine rev for a few seconds before it shut off. Although the source could not be identified, investigators flagged this because it aligned with the timing of Daniel's vehicle movement. Another witness at house #229 stated she saw the front porch light at Grace's house turn on and off twice between 6 o'clock and 7 p.m., but thought it was just the motion sensor. All statements were cross-referenced with the camera timeline and included in the report. When compiling the data, the analysis team clearly identified 3 inconsistencies. 1. No footage showed Grace leaving the residential area despite Daniel's claim that she went out for a walk. 2. Daniel's vehicle moved out of the neighborhood during a time he claimed to be inside the house. 3 light fluctuations in Grace's house coincided with Daniel's vehicle movement, but lacked a matching explanation. These inconsistencies were not yet sufficient to establish criminal elements, but were flagged as anomalies requiring deeper cross-checking. The end-of-day report concluded, camera data does not support the hypothesis that the victim left the house on foot. Vehicle activity in the area recorded no signs of Grace's movement. Inconsistencies have arisen that require clarification in the primary witness's statement. Immediately after completing camera data, cross-referencing, and noting initial inconsistencies in the statement, La Mesa PD returned to Grace's house to conduct a basic-level search within the legal limits permitted in a missing adult case without confirmed criminal elements. 2 on-scene officers, along with an investigator, documented the entire house layout: front door normally locked, no signs of forced entry, back door bolted from inside, but slightly ajar, noted as inconsistent with habits per Daniel's description, though still no conclusion of external interference. The living room was tidy, sofa undisturbed, rug without drag marks, coffee table free of spilled or broken items. Grace's computer was on standby, screen showing an unfinished document, but no sensitive data, so it could not be seized without a court order. In the kitchen, the light was still on, a dish towel damp, indicating someone had recently used the sink before going missing. However, no food spilled, no missing knives or utensils, and the countertop showed no stains or signs of struggle. The master bedroom was neat, bed not disheveled, closet door open on one side, but still considered normal for family routine. No signs of aggressive rummaging inside. On the nightstand was an open book, and Grace's wedding ring placed exactly where Daniel said she usually left it when washing her hands. This was noted as a minor anomaly, but not yet sufficient evidentiary value to seize, as it did not prove criminal conduct. The small upstairs office, where Daniel claimed to have been during the time Grace allegedly left, showed no disturbed items. Daniel's computer was off, no clear activity history visible without forensic examination. Laundry room and garage were quickly checked, no soiled clothing, no separate trash containing unusual items, no wet footprints or drag marks. In the garage, Daniel's vehicle was parked in its normal spot, no unusual odors, no fresh scratches. However, without an advance search warrant, police could not open the trunk or remove floor mats to check for biological traces. Overall, the house showed no clear signs of struggle, ransacking, or violence, factors that kept police constrained to handling it as missing person. No suspicious crime indicators per California guidelines, unless new anomalies emerged. Items such as Grace's phone, the jacket she usually wore for walks, and a pair of sneakers placed right by the door were noted as details potentially indicating she did not leave according to habit. But seizing the phone or personal items required, proving investigative value beyond normal routine, which at this point, police lacked sufficient grounds to request a court order for. Additionally, legal limits prevented the search team from applying advanced forensic techniques, such as luminol spraying, DNA swabbing from doorknobs, checking for unusual fingerprints, or collecting carpet fibers, because California law requires reasonable suspicion of violent crime or strong circumstantial evidence, while Grace's case remained at missing person of unknown cause. The investigator noted in the report that several factors were unusual: a jar back door, phone left behind, kitchen light on, Daniel's timeline inconsistencies, but did not yet meet the threshold to upgrade the case to a criminal investigation. Even the initial oversights by the first responding officers on the night Grace went missing were acknowledged. On the first night, failure to seal the back door area and establish a protective perimeter around the house significantly reduced the chance of preserving shoe prints or touch evidence. However, since it was not yet a criminal case at that time, the procedure was deemed consistent with required protocol. After completing the basic search, the scene report concluded that the house showed no clear signs of crime at the time of inspection. Anomalous items did not yet qualify as evidence, and there was no legal basis to proceed with expanded forensic examination. The case therefore remained classified as missing adult, no suspicious crime indicators, not yet eligible for upgrade to criminal investigation, while continuing to monitor community tips and preparing for expanded review if new data emerged. Immediately after completing the basic search, but finding no signs of crime, the investigation team shifted to digital and personal behavioral data analysis of Grace to determine whether she left voluntarily or had made any preparations prior to going missing. Phone data was the top priority. The device was found on the table next to the sofa, screen off, but with battery remaining. And per legal rules, police could only collect a data copy with Daniel's consent as next of kin. He agreed, and the phone was sent to the digital unit. Extraction reports showed that in the 24 hours before going missing, Grace made few outgoing calls or texts, only 2 messages to a coworker about the next morning's meeting, and 1 message confirming completion of online work around 4:50 p.m. No missed calls after Daniel came home, despite the phone always being within reach. Work calendar synced with email showed an internal meeting at 10 a.m. the next day and personal reminders such as grocery shopping and water bill payment, nothing suggesting intent to leave long-term or major life changes. Scanned email showed only a few work emails and 2 promotional ones, none indicating conflict, argument, or arrangements to meet strangers. Grace's social media accounts showed no new logins after 5 p.m. on the day of the incident. Phone location data showed the device did not leave the home Wi-Fi area after 5:15 p.m., meaning if Grace left, she did so without her phone, further increasing the anomaly. In addition, police requested bank transaction logs for Grace for the 72 hours before and after the time she went missing. Records showed she used her credit card to buy groceries at 11 a.m. at La Mesa Village Grocery and no transactions afterward. Debit card unused, no ATM withdrawals, no transfers, no unusual transactions such as buying transit tickets, renting vehicles, or paying for off-site services. Banking app logins showed no unauthorized access. The Financial Investigation Unit concluded no record of any actions preparing for voluntary departure. To expand, police checked MTS public transit usage data, including buses and trolleys. Since Grace had no prior MTS card, tracing relied on public transit cameras and boarding alighting data for the 5:30 to 9 p.m. window. All routes passing through La Mesa were reviewed, Route 852, Route 856, and the Orange Line. No woman matching Grace's description appeared in bus cameras or at nearby stops. The busy Grossmont Transit Center hub also showed no matching figure. Concurrently, police checked short-term rental car systems, private shuttles, and popular 2011 ride services such as local taxis. Taxi call logs showed no pickups from Grace's address that evening, no pre-booked rides, no pickup requests, no cash transactions recorded in the area. Police also checked domestic flight bookings using Grace's social security number for the 3 days after she went missing. Negative results. Commercial rental car records, Enterprise, Hertz, Avis in the San Diego area, showed no rentals under Grace's or Daniel's name. To reinforce movement behavior analysis, the investigation team examined the possibility Grace used services or vehicles that left no financial trace, for example, rides from friends. They contacted her 3 closest coworkers, 2 best friends, and 1 relative living 20 minutes away. All confirmed no contact with Grace on the day of the incident, and no requests for pickup or unexpected meetings. After compiling all digital data, the analysis report determined there was no evidence. Grace planned to go anywhere, meet anyone, prepared to leave home, or exhibited voluntary departure behavior. Leaving the phone behind further reinforced this conclusion. Grace did not have a habit of leaving home without her phone. Her next day's work schedule was packed, giving no reason to abruptly leave. Normal spending history and no unusual payments indicated financial stability. Meanwhile, location and Wi-Fi connection data from her phone, laptop, and smartwatch showed no device left the house from afternoon to night, an element flagged as disappearance inconsistent with voluntary behavior. Concurrently, police collected data from parking lots near Lake Murray and the small commercial area on the boulevard to check for unfamiliar vehicles or evening lot rentals, but no license plates or evidence indicated Grace was taken to those areas by vehicle. These findings were recorded in the summary report. No clear direction of travel, no evidence of ticket purchases, service usage, or behavior indicating geographic relocation of the victim. Low likelihood of departure by vehicle without financial trace, unless taken against will. At the end of the report, the analysis team concluded that all digital and financial data supported the scenario. The victim did not leave the house voluntarily or did not have the opportunity to actively leave before being reported missing, with no indicators pointing to intentional self-removal or planned disappearance. After completing digital and financial analysis of Grace, the investigation team moved to evaluating directly related persons, with mandatory focus on Daniel, the last person to see the victim and the one who reported her missing. The initial vetting process did not presume Daniel as a suspect, but per investigative standards, all statements from the primary witness must be cross-checked at multiple levels to assess risk level, consistency, and potential indirect or direct involvement in Grace's disappearance. First, the team reviewed all statements Daniel provided from the first night through subsequent interviews. 3 anomalies were noted. 1, Daniel claimed he remained at home continuously after 5:45 p.m., but camera footage showed his vehicle leaving the neighborhood at 6:32 p.m. and returning 2 minutes later. 2, light activity in the house, on and off over 6 minutes, was not mentioned in any of Daniel's statements, despite that being the period he said he was upstairs. 3, he could not clearly recall the time Grace left, only vaguely stating around 6:15, with tone changes when pressed for details. These anomalies were flagged, but not yet sufficient to place Daniel on a suspect list. To clarify his actions on the day of the incident, investigators requested Daniel's work schedule from the financial firm where he was employed. Electronic time records confirmed Daniel was at the office from 8:01 a.m. to 5:12 p.m., left the parking lot at 5:20 p.m., and internal office cameras recorded him walking to his car with no signs of stress or haste. A coworker confirmed speaking with him at end of day about the next morning's meeting plans. Daniel's next day schedule was also collected. He had a 10 a.m. meeting, with preparatory documents emailed internally at 7 a.m. the morning of the meeting, showing he continued to follow work routines with no signs of avoidance behavior. Investigators next cross-checked Daniel's communication logs. Data extracted from his phone showed from 5:45 to 7:30 p.m. Daniel made almost no calls, only 1 work email check at 6:05 p.m. and 1 text to a coworker about sending a document update the next morning. The 7:48 p.m. text to Grace, "Are you okay? Call me," was sent after Daniel said he started to get worried because Grace hadn't returned. No suspicious content, no deleted messages, no mysterious call history. GPS data from Daniel's phone matched home location throughout the evening, except for the 2-minute vehicle movement, consistent with camera data. When asked why he did not mention the short drive in the first interview, Daniel replied that he didn't think it was important information and only drove out to check if Grace had walked in that direction. Although this explanation could be behaviorally plausible, investigators noted that Daniel tended to describe events in ways that minimized attention to his movements on the night Grace disappeared. The team also applied behavioral analysis to Daniel's interactions with neighbors that night. Daniel appeared stably concerned, voice steady without strong fluctuations, neither overly flustered nor indifferent. This fell within normal behavior for a missing person reporter. Additionally, his consistent cooperation from start to finish, allowing phone and financial data extraction, consenting to house search, providing work schedule, and proactively answering all questions, was viewed as a risk-mitigating indicator. Investigators also reviewed other objective factors potentially linking to Daniel. 1, no prior domestic violence reports. 2, no history of debt, financial disputes, or personal conflicts. 3, coworkers and friends described him as calm, with no unusual behavior in the days before or after Grace's disappearance. Daniel's financial records showed completely normal transactions, no large withdrawals, no unusual purchases, or contacts with services during the missing time frame. Company computer logs confirmed his account logged in at standard times, with no unusual access. In addition, police gathered information from a female coworker who shared an office with Daniel and had a long conversation with him that week. she confirmed Daniel made no mention of marital arguments or issues. All these behavioral elements were compared against the California DOJ's Missing Adult Close Contact Assessment Framework. Preliminary conclusion: Daniel had 3 anomalies in his statements, but no physical, digital, or financial evidence indicating motive or direct action leading to Grace's disappearance. The time inconsistencies were assessed as requiring follow-up, but did not meet criteria to place him on a suspect list. File notation: Daniel. Level 1 person of interest, insufficient basis for criminal suspicion at this time, continue monitoring behavior and statements in subsequent investigation phases. Over the next 8 weeks, La Mesa PD maintained a minimal investigative pace in anticipation of a new lead emerging, but every line of inquiry led to a dead end. No additional witnesses, no physical traces, no unusual location pings or financial activity from Grace, and no further area camera footage to expand the timeline. The anomalies in Daniel's statements were cross-checked multiple times, but never developed into concrete evidence, leaving the case in a state lacking a body, lacking conflicting testimony, lacking clear signs of criminality, and lacking any behavioral pattern that could be used to sketch a crime scenario. Both the La Mesa Police Department and the San Diego County District Attorney's Office agreed that the case lacked traditional investigative structure: no suspect, no direction of travel, no physical evidence, no secondary crime scene, and no indication that Grace had ever appeared outside the residence after the last time Daniel reported seeing her. The digital forensics team re-examined all data every 6 weeks, but each sweep produced no change. Grace's email inbox received no suspicious messages, her social media accounts showed no logins, her bank cards remained unused, and no matching missing person reports from other states aligned with her description. Meanwhile, ground search teams for the Lake Murray and Mission Trails areas continued periodic weekend patrols in case someone spotted unusual objects, but every call reporting something odd was verified as trash, discarded clothing, or hikers' belongings. After 90 days, the summary report stated clearly: no new leads, no developments, no additional data. The impasse became even clearer when coordinated efforts with other agencies, FBI, San Diego Sheriff's Department, and the California Missing Persons Network, all returned negative results. Grace's fingerprint records, biometric data, and medical information did not match any unidentified remains found statewide from 2011 to 2014. Local intelligence units also detected no pattern of forcible abductions, kidnappings, or assaults in the La Mesa area during that period, undermining the random crime hypothesis. Daniel remained a level 1 person of interest, but the absence of physical evidence, scene traces, and any strong behavioral indicators prevented the case from being upgraded to a criminal investigation. Local media attention, which had initially been intense, gradually faded with no new developments, resulting in fewer community tips. By mid-2013, official investigative resources allocated to the case were scaled back. The team shifted to a review cycle every 6 months and handled new incoming calls, but conducted no further large-scale searches. Within the department, new priorities, including 2 homicides and a series of serious armed robberies, forced command to reassign personnel to cases showing clearer progress. By 2014, with statewide reviews still showing no trace of Grace, the missing persons file was re-evaluated under California DOJ criteria. No progress for over 24 months, no viable investigative direction, no special risk to community safety, and no evidence justifying continued active investigation. The report recommended classifying the case as a long-term missing adult, meaning no priority investigative resources would be assigned. In early 2015, with approval from the watch commander, Grace Ellwood's file was transferred to the La Mesa Police Department's cold case unit. The case status changed from active missing person to inactive teen. Open for review, marking the official end of all proactive investigative activity. Collected materials, scene notes, camera photos, statements, digital data were boxed and stored in long-term archives. A duplicate copy was uploaded to the San Diego County Case Management System to ensure automatic cross-referencing if another agency ever located matching unidentified remains or evidence. The final meeting before cold case classification recorded a brief but heavy conclusion: no leads, no autonomous departure behavior, no criminal evidence, no scene, insufficient basis to expand investigation. Case remains open, but with no active operations. From that point onward, the disappearance of Grace Ellwood officially fell silent, becoming one of La Mesa's unsolved files for nearly a decade. In early March 2021, almost 6 years after Grace's file was moved to cold case status, a trail maintenance crew in Mission Trails Regional Park reported an urgent find: suspected human bone fragments on the northern slope of Oak Canyon, an infrequently visited area that had not been included in the 2011 search grid due to rugged terrain, poor visibility, and lack of direct access. Upon receiving the report, La Mesa PD immediately coordinated with the San Diego County Sheriff's Homicide Unit and the medical examiner's forensic team to secure the area, establishing a scene perimeter exceeding a 150-meter radius to prevent disturbance of evidence. The workers reported seeing a white bone segment protruding from dry soil after the previous week's heavy rain had eroded the surface, exposing 2 smaller fragments a few meters away. The forensic team first confirmed the material was human bone, specifically long bone portions likely from the lower limb. The entire area was then gridded for systematic excavation. Surface soil was removed in thin layers using soft brushes and specialized tools to avoid fracturing fragments. During recovery, searchers located additional scattered bone pieces across roughly 20 square meters, a decayed light-colored fabric fragment believed to be from clothing, and a partially decomposed small cord. All items were numbered, photographed, and collected per protocol. No jewelry or phone was found, but a single intact metal button with rust traces was recovered near the main bone cluster. An on-site scene map was created, marking every bone fragment location to assess dispersal patterns and evaluate possible animal scavenging or long-term erosion effects. After collection was completed, all samples were immediately transported to the medical examiner's laboratory. Forensic analysis extracted DNA from sufficiently intact bone portions and compared it to the reference DNA sample collected from Grace's relatives in 2011. STR analysis results returned by late March showed a high probability match, confirming the remains belonged to Grace. The autopsy report also noted that most bones exhibited natural decomposition over many years, but certain areas, particularly the skull, showed fissured fractures and triangular fragments suggestive of heavy blunt force impact from a hard object. The left forearm displayed a defensive-type fracture commonly seen when a victim raises an arm to shield themselves. Tissue remnants around the bones and adhering soil were analyzed to estimate time since death, approximately 24-48 hours after Grace was reported missing in 2011. This indicated she died almost immediately after disappearing, completely ruling out scenarios of survival for days or prolonged captivity. No bullet damage was present, but the skull injury pattern was consistent with a narrow-edged or small flat-surfaced object, most likely a tool rather than a fall. The forensic report stated clearly, cause of death, craniocerebral trauma, likely due to severe external force. Manner of death, homicide. Once the conclusion was announced internally, Grace Ellwood's file was immediately removed from cold case status and reclassified as an active homicide investigation. The La Mesa PD investigative commander called an emergency meeting with major crimes detectives and redirected all available resources to the file. The Oak Canyon area, previously excluded from the 2011 search because authorities believed Grace could not have walked there, now became a potential secondary scene likely to contain overlooked evidence. A large-scale K-9 and ground-penetrating radar sweep was launched the following week to locate any possible murder weapon or personal items belonging to Grace. Locating the remains after nearly a decade not only provided the breakthrough needed to break the long-standing impasse since 2011, but also formally reclassified the matter from a missing person case to a homicide, establishing legal grounds for expanded investigative powers, enhanced search warrants, and collection of previously restricted digital evidence. With the forensic report confirming death by external force and a time of death closely matching the moment Grace vanished, the case was elevated to the highest priority level across San Diego County, marking a complete shift in investigative direction after years of silence. Immediately after the forensic conclusion confirmed the Mission Trail's remains belonged to Grace, and that death resulted from external force, La Mesa PD and the San Diego County Sheriff expanded the scene to a 500-meter radius around the bone discovery point, treating the entire Oak Canyon area as a dump site, a location where the perpetrator disposed of the body rather than the primary attack site. The terrain survey team began reconstructing the area layout. Oak Canyon is a narrow, deep ravine flanked by rocky and sandy slopes, with inclines ranging from 20 to 35 degrees, dense chaparral, sagebrush, and low oak scrub. The nearest main trail, Oak Canyon Trail, lies about 180 meters west of the bone location, while the closest vehicle-accessible route, an old maintenance road, sits more than 420 meters away, meaning the perpetrator could not have driven directly to the disposal site. Investigators identified 3 plausible approach routes, one from Oak Canyon Trail, a 6-7-minute walk through thick brush, 2 from the northern slope via a lesser-known local footpath, 3 from the old maintenance road, descending into low woodland, but requiring at least 300 meters of rough off-trail travel. Identifying these routes allowed investigators to infer that the perpetrator was likely familiar with the terrain or had previously visited Mission Trails, as the disposal location would be difficult to find without prior knowledge or scouting. Next, the soil forensics team analyzed soil composition, adhering to bone fragments and accumulated in pelvic cavities, where soil readily collects during decomposition. Comparison with regional soil maps showed that soil on the bones had higher sand content, lighter color than the natural red soil at Oak Canyon, and silica/stone fragment ratios consistent with western slope soils of Mission Trails, but not a perfect match to the exact discovery point. This suggested Grace may have been placed or dragged through a different area before natural dispersal at the found location. However, the bone dispersal pattern mapped on site showed relatively even radial spread rather than linear drag or trajectory, indicating the body was likely deposited intact initially and later affected by wildlife over the years. Plant material adhering to the bones, primarily small roots and bark fragments, was analyzed to determine deposition timing and soil contact. Some small oak roots penetrating bone gaps were estimated to have grown for 7-9 years, reasonably consistent with the remains being left there shortly after the 2011 disappearance. Additionally, decomposed plant fibers on the back of the scapula suggested the body was initially placed face down rather than supine, consistent with a quick body dump behavior without repositioning the victim. Alongside soil and botanical survey, skeletal forensics continued detailed examination of physical marks on the remains. The skull exhibited 3 triangular depressed fractures with sharp rather than rounded edges, characteristic of impact from a narrow flat surface, such as a tool handle or hard metal wood object. No puncture wounds were present, ruling out knives or pointed instruments. A small fracture on the left radius was consistent with a defensive arm-raising motion, indicating Grace reacted to the blow. No direct ligature marks such as cord impressions on wrist bones were found. However, a faint groove on the right wrist, too subtle to conclusively indicate binding, was noted as an anomaly. The leg bones showed no drag marks, meaning the perpetrator did not drag the body forcefully across the ground, and likely carried or shouldered it to the disposal site. This led to a key hypothesis, given the steep terrain, dense vegetation, and distance from the nearest access point to the disposal site. The perpetrator must have had sufficient physical strength to transport an average adult female body, 55, 60 kilograms, without leaving drag marks or grooves. This also reduced the likelihood that the perpetrator was physically frail or elderly. A terrain analysis map was recreated using satellite imagery combined with drone footage to identify possible vehicle staging areas. Investigators pinpointed a flat clearing, roughly 6'8" meters, near the old maintenance road, where very faint old tire impressions were visible on hard-packed soil, though dating was impossible. This represented the closest point a vehicle could stop before the perpetrator had to walk farther in. The distance from this potential parking spot to the disposal site was approximately 305 meters, a 4-7-minute walk, depending on carried weight. Another route, the Northern Auxiliary Path, had a small pull-off suitable for a car if the driver was willing to take the risk. However, due to the narrow and little-known terrain, investigators considered this route more consistent with someone familiar with the area. No fresh tire marks were found, but archived city GIS maps showed the maintenance road had been open for a 2009 construction project during a period when some local residents used it as a shortcut for walking or biking, meaning the perpetrator may have known the path beforehand. The combination of difficult access, average distance from vehicle staging to the dump site, and the natural dispersal characteristics of the remains led the team to conclude that the body was transported to Oak Canyon in a single trip, placed intact, with no attempt at burial or covering, and subsequently affected by erosion and animals over many years. The absence of drag marks, lack of large remaining items, absence of fresh soil layers at the time, and no extended drag trajectory outward from the site indicated the body was moved by hand, either carried or shouldered, rather than dragged with tools or vehicles. The perpetrator must have had sufficient strength and at least moderate familiarity with mission trails to reach the location quickly and depart unnoticed. All data from soil, botanical, skeletal, and terrain surveys were compiled into a 46-page supplemental scene report, concluding the disposal site is a secondary scene. The body was placed there within 24-48 hours of Grace's disappearance, and the most likely approach route was the old maintenance road where the perpetrator could park discreetly. This document became a critical foundation for the suspect analysis and body transport timeline phases of the subsequent investigation. After establishing the body dump site and the manner of transport into mission trails, the investigative team recognized that every perpetrator hypothesis depended on accurately reconstructing the movement timeline around Grace's 2011 disappearance, a task previously impossible due to technological limitations of the era. In 2024, La Mesa PD collaborated with the San Diego County Digital Analysis Unit to deploy an old data recovery package using next-generation AI tools, including enhancement of low-resolution camera footage, recovery of OnStar data from Daniel's 2010-era vehicle, re-extraction of household smart meter data, and recalculation of cell tower pings using 2011 coverage models. The goal was to establish a definitive timeline with a maximum error of 30 seconds, determining exactly when, in which direction, and for how long Daniel's vehicle actually moved. First, the imaging forensics group focused on Valley Garden area cameras from over 40 video files captured in 2011, mostly 240p, 480p resolution. AI was applied to reconstruct frames, sharpen vehicle outlines, highlight reflected light, and match motion timing. Particularly, the garage camera at house hash 207, the only one capturing Daniel's vehicle moving at 6:32, was enhanced using multi-layer super-resolution algorithms. Results showed that beyond simply leaving the neighborhood, the taillights flared for 3 seconds, then extinguished, suggesting a sudden brake or abrupt stop near the curve immediately after exiting the house. Previously, data only indicated the vehicle moved and returned, but the new enhancement revealed a 46-second stop outside camera view, rather than the reported 15-20 seconds. Headlight reflections on the opposite house wall indicated the vehicle did not simply reverse, but performed a wide steering maneuver, consistent with a sedan turning around on a narrow street. The longer stop was flagged as a Level 2 anomaly. Next, the digital team submitted a request to OnStar, now part of GM Global Archives, to retrieve long-archived logs. In 2011, Daniel's vehicle had an older OnStar module that stored automatic data for about 90 days before overwrite. But event records remained on backtrace servers. Using 2024 decoding tools, technicians recovered a minimal log, including door open times, ignition on times, speed in the first and last 60 seconds of each short trip, as defined by the system. From the extracted log, Daniel's vehicle ignition turned on at 6 hours 31 minutes and 42 seconds p.m. and off at 6 hours 34 minutes and 9 seconds p.m. Maximum recorded speed was 14 mph, consistent with short intra-neighborhood travel. Most critically, the log showed 2 consecutive door open events, first at 6 hours 31 minutes and 39 seconds, and second at 6 hours 33 minutes and 52 seconds, directly contradicting Daniel's claim that he did not get out of the car upon returning home. The investigative team flagged this as a Level 3 anomaly, requires independent corroboration. Concurrently, the utilities group recovered smart meter data from Grace's residence. The 2011 electricity meter recorded consumption in 15-minute blocks, but the utility server retained detailed 5-minute logs that had never been queried at the time. After decoding, the data showed a slight increase from 6 o'clock to 6:15 p.m. due to kitchen lights and computer use, but from 6:15 to 6:25, an unusual pattern. 2 distinct on-off cycles of interior lights, matching light fluctuations visible on HouseHash 215's camera, but inconsistent with Daniel's claim that he remained upstairs continuously. The smart meter recorded the kitchen light turning on at 6:18 p.m. and off at 6:22 p.m. This interval precisely overlapped with Daniel's vehicle departure time per the garage camera. Combining the 2 datasets indicated Daniel could not simultaneously leave the house in the vehicle and operate interior lights unless another person was present. The analysis team then traced cell tower data. Using 2011 coverage model reconstruction algorithms and historical ATAN records, they confirmed Daniel's phone remained connected to the same cell ID throughout the evening, proving the device never left the residence. However, signal strength dropped sharply between 6:31, 6:34. This matched known patterns of phone inside a closed garage. Metal framing causes attenuation, or phone carried to the vehicle and into a shielded area. The attenuation magnitude aligned with documented garage door close scenarios. Based on this, investigators concluded Daniel entered the garage during this window, contradicting his description of simply driving out and returning. Finally, all datasets were synthesized to reconstruct Daniel's vehicle timeline during Grace's disappearance. Howard generated a multi-layer timeline showing -6:15, 6:18 p.m. household activity inconsistent with statements 6:18, 6:31. No vehicle movement, 6:31. Ignition on, 2 door open events. 6:31, 6:32. Vehicle rolls out of garage. 6:32, 6:33. Vehicle proceeds to curve near exit, stops for 46 seconds. 6:33, 6:34. Vehicle turns around, 2 door events indicating exit entry activity. 6:34. Ignition off. Vehicle returns to garage. 6:35, 7 o'clock. No household movement per smart meter. From this data, investigators confirmed that the 2011 movement timeline contained significant discrepancies from Daniel's initial and supplemental statements, creating an unexplained gap of over 2 minutes outside camera range and near the neighborhood exit. The 2024 reconstruction report concluded that new technology had clarified previously inaccessible information gaps, providing a more accurate picture of behavior and movement on the evening Grace disappeared, establishing a vital foundation for re-evaluating suspect possibilities and body transport scenarios in the ongoing investigation. Right after the 2024 technology-enhanced timeline reconstruction was completed and submitted to the command team, La Mesa PD opened the first official interrogation of Daniel since the case file was reactivated. The interrogation took place in interview room number 3 at the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, fully recorded on video and conducted in the presence of 2 veteran cold case detectives. They began by asking Daniel to recount the entire sequence of events on the evening of June 14, 2011, exactly as in his original statement, without referring to any documents or notes. Daniel repeated the familiar sequence. He arrived home at 5:45, saw Grace cleaning the kitchen, then went upstairs to work. Didn't hear the door close, so he assumed she went for a walk. And around after 7 o'clock began to worry, sending texts and making calls, the entire account nearly verbatim to the 2011 version. When Daniel finished his narration, the detectives opened the thick case file, placed 3 AI-enhanced stills from the camera in front of him, Daniel's sedan leaving the garage at 6:31, stopping at the curve out of camera view for 46 seconds, then turning back. Daniel was silent for a few seconds before saying he didn't remember the car stopping that long. The detectives countered, the original camera only showed a portion, but 2024 technology had recovered reflected light and taillight intensity, showing the vehicle stopped for nearly a full minute, far longer than the few seconds to check he had claimed. Next, they presented the OnStar log. The vehicle ignition turned on at 6 hours 31 minutes and 42 seconds and off at 6 hours 34 minutes and 9 seconds, with 2 door openings in quick succession. Something Daniel had never mentioned in any prior interview. Daniel responded awkwardly that he might have lost composure and gotten out to check, but the detectives pointed out if he had gotten out, he would know he had gotten out, rather than saying might have or don't remember. They then presented the home's smart meter data. The kitchen lights turned on at 6:18 and off at 6:22. Precisely during the window when Daniel's vehicle had not yet moved. This created a paradox. If Daniel was upstairs as he claimed, who turned the kitchen lights on and off? Daniel insisted it might have been motion sensor lights, but the detectives had checked the electrical system and confirmed no motion sensors were installed in 2011. This moment marked a shift in the interrogation. Daniel could no longer maintain coherent explanations, pausing frequently, breathing heavily, and shifting posture constantly. The detectives continued with cell tower analysis. A sharp drop in signal strength during the 6:31-6:34 window proved the phone was still inside the house, but the garage door was closed, or the person holding the phone was standing close to the vehicle in the garage, causing signal blockage, directly contradicting the claim that Daniel was in the house the entire time and only went out in the car for a few minutes. When confronted with the 3 data points, camera, OnStar, smart meter, Daniel could not provide a unified explanation. From this point, the interrogation team began compiling the contradictions in chronological order. 1. He claimed Grace left the house around 6:15, but no camera captured any movement matching her build. 2. He claimed he did not leave the house until calling Grace at 7:48, but his vehicle left the garage at 6:31. 3. He claimed he only drove out to look for her, but the camera showed a prolonged stop and 2 door openings. 4. He claimed he did not get out of the car, but OnStar showed otherwise. 5. He claimed he was upstairs during 6:15-6:22, but the smart meter recorded the kitchen lights being turned on and off repeatedly. 6. He claimed no unusual activity in the house, but the light data from the camera at house number 215 matched the smart meter, consistent yet completely contradictory to his claim of being upstairs. When the detectives laid out this chain of facts on the board, Daniel began to shift strategy, stating that his memory was no longer accurate after so many years. But one detective pointed out, memory can be hazy, but electrical devices, cameras, and OnStar logs are not. When asked to explain each specific timestamp, Daniel only repeated vague phrases like, "I don't remember. I might have been mistaken. I didn't think it was important." The inconsistency became glaring when the detectives asked, "Why didn't you mention the car stopping for so long out of camera view? Why didn't you mention opening the car door twice? Why didn't you mention the lights in the house turning on and off?" Daniel appeared flustered and could not provide a logical answer. The next phase of the interrogation focused on identifying the period during which Daniel could not prove an alibi. From the reconstructed data, the longest and most critical gap was from 6:15 to 6:34, coinciding with the time frame when Grace most likely left the house or was attacked according to forensic analysis. During this window, Daniel could not prove where he was, what he was doing, or why his statements did not match the data. This 19-minute unaccounted period was sufficient to commit the act inside the house, transport the body to the garage, place it in the vehicle, or handle evidence, then exit and return. The task force compiled all contradictions into a 14-page report, clearly documenting 11 serious inconsistencies in Daniel's statements from 2011 to 2024, including discrepancies in timing, movement behavior, in-house activity, and responses to verification questions. With Grace's case now officially classified as homicide, the recovered digital evidence completely eliminated the theory that Grace left voluntarily, while establishing legal grounds to reclassify Daniel from person of interest level 1 to primary suspect. At the conclusion of the interrogation, the detectives informed Daniel that he was being placed on the suspect of interest tier 1 list, the highest level of suspicion in San Diego County's homicide investigation protocol, and that any further statements from him would be handled within a criminal context. Daniel remained silent, requested an attorney, and the interrogation ended. But for the investigating agency, this was the official milestone. From this point forward, Daniel Ellwood was regarded as the central suspect in the Grace Ellwood case after more than a decade. Immediately after Daniel was officially designated a central suspect, La Mesa PD obtained a second search warrant for the residence, this time under homicide investigation standards, allowing expanded evidence collection and the application of modern crime scene forensic techniques not available in 2011. The search was conducted early in the morning, with participation from the San Diego County Violent Crimes Forensic Team and the Trace Evidence Unit. The entire house was sealed, from the garage to the attic, and the forensic team divided the areas into 12 survey grids to minimize the risk of missing anything. The primary focus was the garage, where OnStar logs and smart meter data had indicated suspicious activity during Grace's disappearance window. After moving Daniel's vehicle out for scene processing, investigators discovered on a wooden shelf at the back of the garage a 2.5-pound wooden-handled axe stored in an old plastic bin, beneath which lay approximately 3.2 meters of nylon rope and a grayish-tan canvas bag with dark stains. These three items had not been seized in 2011 due to insufficient apparent relevance, but the new search permitted full impoundment. The axe showed no major chips, but the blade edge had 3 small indentations, their shape relatively consistent with the triangular fracture pattern on Grace's skull, as described in the forensic report. The wooden handle exhibited worn varnish in the middle section, suggesting repeated or forceful gripping. The nylon rope was double-wound, intact with no broken strands, one end frayed possibly from friction. The canvas bag, stained with soil at the bottom, contained 3 scraps of fabric and an old pair of gardening gloves. All items were seized and transferred to the Trace Evidence Lab. The forensic team applied luminol in the garage and vehicle interior. Although detecting molecular-level blood after more than a decade is difficult, several faint reactive spots near the wooden shelf were documented and sampled. Concurrently, the Trace DNA analysis unit processed the axe, nylon rope, and gloves using ultra-sensitive molecular swab technology. On the axe, they recovered a very small mixed DNA sample, including a male profile matching Daniel and an extremely low-level female profile sufficient only for comparison with Grace's reference sample. The results showed a match at 9 of 15 loci, not conclusive for direct victim contact with the axe, but sufficient to flag it for further analysis. On the nylon rope, examiners detected surface protein residue consistent with long-degraded keratin. DNA sampled from the remaining frayed section showed a weak female profile matching Grace at 6/15 loci, not conclusive, but not excluding contact. Soil adhering to the rope and canvas bag was sent to the forensic geology section. When comparing soil composition, silica mineral ratio, microgranite fragment ratio, and bright sandy soil color characteristic of the Western Mission Trail slopes, with samples from the Oak Canyon recovery site, the results showed high similarity. The lab concluded, soil adhering to the evidence items is highly likely to originate from the same soil type as the area where the remains were discovered. This finding was especially significant because Daniel's garage is located in residential La Mesa, where natural soil is dark loam, not bright sandy mix. This proved that at least one of the evidence items, or the canvas bag itself, had direct contact with an area sharing soil characteristics with the body disposal site. Meanwhile, infrared spectroscopy on the canvas bag showed the dark stains were not human blood, but contained decomposed organic biological residue, consistent with an item that had contact with a body during early decomposition. In terms of toolmark forensics, the bone analysis team compared the 3 small indentations on the axe blade with the triangular cracking on Grace's skull. While not conclusive beyond doubt, they noted similarity in size and angle, the report stated. The seized axe exhibits impact morphology consistent with the wound pattern identified on the victim's remains, but not independently sufficient to identify the axe as the weapon. However, when combined with soil analysis and trace DNA, the level of association increased significantly. Finally, the garage analysis team searched for additional secondary traces, a very small fabric fiber stuck in the car door seam, compared with decayed fabric fragments found near the remains at Mission Trails. The fiber sample from the garage showed light-colored polyester characteristics matching 87% with the seen fabric, not conclusive but supportive of the hypothesis that the canvas bag or other garage contents once held victim-related fabric items. The 59-page summary report concluded that 1 evidence seized from the garage, axe nylon rope canvas bag, shows signs of contact with soil from the disposal site. 2 trace DNA found may belong to Grace. 3 indentations on the axe correlate with damage to the victim's skull. 4. There is no reasonable explanation for why Daniel's garage evidence contains soil characteristic of Mission Trails. 5. The evidence may have been used in the process of transporting the body or handling body-related items. With these findings, La Mesa PD confirmed that the evidence seized in the second search holds direct or indirect evidentiary value related to the movement of Grace Ellwood's body, substantially strengthening a previously linkage-deficient investigation file. Immediately after seizing the forensically valuable evidence set from the garage and conducting preliminary comparisons with soil, trace DNA, and marks on Grace's remains, La Mesa PD forwarded the entire case file to the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit to construct an offender behavioral model. The BO's task was to determine offender type, sequence of actions, level of preparation, knowledge of terrain, and relationship between offender and victim. First, the BOZ analyzed the Oak Canyon disposal site. Its location deep in difficult-to-access terrain required moving 300-400 meters from the nearest vehicle stopping point. This was not a spot someone would stumble upon by chance, nor a quick opportunistic dump location. Per classification standards, selecting a dump site in a large park with low foot traffic, no streetlights, no cameras, and limited vehicle access is categorized as concealment terrain selection, characteristic of offenders capable of risk assessment and familiar with the area's layout. The BOZ concluded that the offender most likely knew Mission Trails or had visited prior to the offense, as choosing Oak Canyon could not have resulted from random improvisation. Next, The BOs examined behavior at the victim's residence based on recovered data, lights toggling during 6:18, 6:22. Grace's phone left behind, the back door ajar but no pry marks, no disarray in the house, no overt signs of struggle. This pattern indicated a staged quiet scene where the offender deliberately preserved the environment to delay early crime recognition. This behavior is common when the offender is an acquaintance or cohabitant, as they understand daily routines and can anticipate how the missing person will be reported. The ajar back door without forced entry evidence, lights toggling coinciding with Daniel's vehicle movement, and the victim's disappearance without her phone. All were classified by the BOs an attempted but unsuccessful, staged voluntary departure motif, meaning an effort to suggest the victim walked away on her own, but without creating convincing supporting evidence. After analyzing behavior at both scenes, the BOs have constructed the offense timeline. Using forensic data, they determined Grace died within 24-48 hours of disappearance, most likely on the evening of June 14th, combining skeletal trauma, 3-point depressed skull fractures, defensive left radial fracture. The BAU reconstructed the scenario, an abrupt close-range attack with a narrow contact surface object. No drag marks in Oak Canyon, no clear ligature severance, no major household dispersion. This suggested Grace was subdued quickly, possibly rendered unconscious immediately after the primary blow. The BAU assessed the offender as low overt violence, but high control, meaning limited prolonged violence, rapid situational control, noise minimization, and efficient planned body transport. The BAU then modeled body relocation using the 2024 technology timeline. From 6:15 to 6:34 p.m., Daniel had an unaccounted window. His vehicle left the garage precisely as house lights toggled. OnStar recorded 2 door openings, consistent with loading or unloading heavy items. The BAU charted the sequence of actions as follows. 1. Grace attacked inside the house, quickly and with minimal noise. 2. The body or unconscious form moved to the garage during the light toggle window. 3. Daniel prepared the vehicle, using the canvas bag, nylon rope or accompanying items. 4. Vehicle exited garage. Paused 46 seconds at the curve to stabilize contents or scan surroundings. 5. Daniel returned to the house to clean surfaces, turn off lights, restore normal appearance. 6. Body moved out of the residence in a subsequent trip. The BAU emphasized this sequence aligns with an offender capable of emotional control, aware of typical police response windows in missing person cases, and able to remain calm post-event, consistent with Daniel's demeanor in the initial hours after reporting her missing. Next, the BAU analyzed potential motive based on personal history. Although no documented domestic violence existed, behavioral patterns in similar cases where the victim is a spouse or partner often involve simmering conflict, financial stress, personal control issues, or relational discord. The BAU noted that Grace's preparation for an important meeting the next day and her stable work state may have conflicted with the offender's control trajectory. Furthermore, the disposal method, selecting a difficult access area without burial, indicated a desire to conceal the body but lacking long-term concealment skill, consistent with someone without criminal history yet aware of detection risk. The BAU then compared the behavioral model against Daniel's schedule, habits, and capabilities. Daniel was in good health, accustomed to running, and had participated in outdoor activities, making transport over rough terrain feasible. He also had basic knowledge of mission trails from weekend trail runs mentioned by coworkers, making Oak Canyon a logical choice. Daniel had a stable career, strong emotional control, and no prior record, traits common in first-time offenders committing intrafamilial homicide. Daniel's phone data showed no contact with anyone during his absence, consistent with a lone actor offender who did not share plans or seek assistance. Finally, the BAU created a subject fit index based on 12 criteria: 1. Access to victim, 2. Opportunity within time frame, 3. Inconsistencies in statements, 4 abnormalities in missing person report behavior, 5 terrain mobility skills, 6 capacity to carry heavy loads, 7 knowledge of disposal area, 8 scene staging behavior, 9 external force consistent with household items, 10 evidence linked to disposal site, soil, 11 absence of evidence supporting stranger hypothesis, 12 post-event emotional control. Daniel matched over 9/12 criteria, placing him in the high behavioral match category. The Bayou report concluded, behavior, opportunity, digital evidence, forensic physical evidence, and body relocation modeling all most closely align, with a lone offender having a close relationship with the victim. Daniel Ellwood meets the majority of criteria characteristic of this offender group and lacks strong counter-evidence to exclude him from the primary suspect pool. This was the first time since 2011 that Daniel was not merely considered a person of interest, but the suspect with the highest behavioral fit, established through a comprehensive offense model integrating forensics, digital evidence, and behavioral analysis. Right after the Bayou completed the behavioral report and the La Mesa PD compiled all forensic data, physical evidence, digital timeline, and expert results from relevant units, the case file was transferred to the San Diego County District Attorney's Office for prosecution review. The first meeting between the investigative team and DA representatives took place in a secure conference room at the Hall of Justice building, where the entire crime sequence was reconstructed using a modern chain of evidence. Soil from the garage matched soil from Oak Canyon, trace DNA on the canvas bag, and nylon rope, consistent with binding marks on the victim's bones. OnStar data confirmed Daniel's vehicle door opened twice within a 15-minute window after the house lights turned on and off, and AI-enhanced camera footage showed Daniel's SUV stopped for 46 seconds at the Jackson Drive intersection, a detail completely inconsistent with his 2011 statement. During the presentation, the lead investigator emphasized that this was no longer a speculative chain of evidence, but an organic timeline structure in which every fact supported and pointed in the same direction. The DA requested a full re-verification of the timeline to ensure no legal gaps existed. After 3 hours of review, the investigative team presented the final summary from 1812 to 1834 on June 14, 2011. Daniel had no alibi. From 1901 to 1948, his SUV appeared in the Mission Trails area, but had never been disclosed by him previously. Based on soil, DNA, and staging behavior, forensic conclusions established a direct link between Daniel's vehicle and the body transport. The DA assessed that the file surpassed the probable cause threshold and approved an arrest warrant for Daniel Ellwood on second-degree murder charges, along with an expanded search warrant for the vehicle and storage areas still under his control. The warrant was signed at 8:42 a.m. on Monday, while Daniel was en route from his workplace. The La Mesa PD Special Enforcement Detail executed the arrest plan. They located Daniel via vehicle tracking, intercepted his vehicle at the Level 3 parking area of an office building in Mission Valley, and maintained full perimeter security as the possibility of the suspect carrying tools or attempting to flee could not be ruled out. Upon approach, Daniel appeared completely surprised, offered no resistance, but repeatedly asked why he was being handcuffed. He was read his Miranda rights on the spot and transported to the station for booking into temporary custody. Immediately after the arrest, the team executing the vehicle search warrant secured Daniel's SUV and used blue spectrum forensic lights to scan for concealed traces. They seized a new roll of nylon rope with a batch code matching the cut section of nylon rope found in the garage, the same type as the binding marks on Grace's bones. Notably, the new roll was in a tool bag and still had a receipt dated June 3, 2011, from a store near their former home. Although it was not the exact roll used, the matching production batch was a significant detail, proving premeditated tool acquisition from the same supply source. In the trunk, small soil particles adhered to the rubber liner edges were collected for comparison with Oak Canyon scene samples. The expanded search extended to a mini storage unit Daniel rented in El Cajon, a 10x 15-foot space. Inside, they found a canvas bag of the same material as the one recovered from the garage, but different size, with multiple dry soil deposits, and an old pair of rubber gloves bearing brownish-gray soil, matching the crime scene soil. All evidence was sealed and immediately sent to the lab for further reinforcement of the case file. In parallel with evidence collection, the investigative team drafted a preliminary charging document with counts of second-degree murder, moving and concealing a body, and obstructing justice through crime scene staging. The DA requested an additional section explaining the differences between Daniel's behavior in 2011 and 2024, emphasizing that newly recovered digital data was the pivotal factor in overcoming the charging threshold. When submitting the charging document, the team attached the BAU crime model, soil and DNA analyses, timeline simulations, and digital technical reports. This was the final completion step before the file moved to the grand jury for formal consideration. Within one day, the entire legal foundation for prosecuting Daniel Ellwood was solidified, paving the way for the next phase of proceedings. Right after Daniel Ellwood's arrest warrant was executed, the La Mesa PD and District Attorney's Office proceeded with the critical step, finalizing the prosecution file by connecting all data from 2011 to 2024 into a structured, robust chain of proof capable of withstanding grand jury scrutiny and trial. The process began by recompiling the original 2011 forensics, though limited, including notes on the home showing no signs of forced entry, no victim belongings taken, and no evidence Grace left voluntarily. That era's report was placed alongside the 2021 forensics, where skeletal remains were found at Oak Canyon, with conclusions of death by external force and fracture patterns consistent with a narrow contact implement, such as an axe. Building on this foundation, the 2024 forensic results, trace DNA, soil analysis, evidence from the garage and vehicle, were integrated using multi-layer matching principles. The DA's dedicated team required all evidence to be organized via forensic continuity, meaning each data point must logically connect to the next through behavior, environment, or time. From there, the team constructed a minute-by-minute crime timeline, starting at 1752 on June 14, 2011, when Grace was confirmed alive via in-home device data, and ending around 1948, when camera footage captured Daniel's SUV near Mission Trails, but absent from his prior statements. The seamless timeline was structured as follows: 1752, 1810, abnormal smart meter activity, recorded sudden electricity spikes and drops, corresponding to room lights turning on/off. 1812, 1834, Daniel's vehicle door opened twice consecutively, per OnStar logs, contradicting his claim of not leaving the house during that window. 1836, neighborhood camera captured Daniel's SUV departing the area, image blurry at the time. But AI enhancement in 2024 confirmed the license plate match. 1858, 1901, vehicle traveled along Navajo Road, inconsistent with the reported route. 1912, 1948. Vehicle appeared in the Oak Canyon area, precisely where remains were later discovered. All elements were unified into one coherent timeline, clearly showing Daniel's presence at multiple key points, contradicting his 2011 statements and ruling out random coincidence. During timeline reconstruction, behavioral facts were interwoven to strengthen the argument, staging the house with no disturbance, no signs of struggle, and no theft aligned with the behavior pattern of a familiar perpetrator, aiming to create the impression that the victim left voluntarily while demonstrating scene control experience. Moving the body out of the house within 15-20 minutes matched the door open data and garage soil volume. Garage soil composition matched Oak Canyon soil, indicating direct contact inexplicable by normal household activity, as that soil type was not used in the surrounding residential area. When cross-referencing evidence, The team mapped each item to the timeline to demonstrate specific roles. The axe matched injury patterns, nylon rope linked to binding marks on bones, canvas bag contained Oak Canyon soil and decomposition organics. Additional evidence from the vehicle and storage, matching batch nylon roll and soil-stained gloves, was categorized as corroborative, not decisive alone, but supporting the logical thread that Daniel prepared tools and had repeated contact with the same soil type. The digital analysis team worked in parallel, creating a comparison chart between Daniel's 2011 statements and 2024 recovered data. Contradictions regarding departure time, route, vehicle usage claims, and in-home electrical activity. Once everything was linked, the DA requested an evidentiary matrix, a chart labeling each element as forensic, digital, behavioral, physical, or timeline. The goal was to demonstrate to the grand jury that the case did not rest on a single piece of evidence, but on multiple independent groups, all converging on the same conclusion. The matrix was built in 3 layers. Layer 1. Foundational data. Layer 2. Behavioral data. Layer 3. Modern physical and scientific data. With all 3 layers stacked, the team constructed a causal chain with steps. 1. Daniel was the last person to see Grace. 2. Grace did not leave the house voluntarily in any manner. 3. Remains appeared in an area. Daniel was present during a time contradicting his statements. 4. Seen soil adhered to Daniel's possessions. 5. Those items matched damage on the remains. 6. Staging behavior matched the BAU identified pattern. 7. Reasonable alternative suspect emerged from the full dataset. Once fully chained, the prosecution file achieved legal sufficiency, strong enough to pass legal review with a reasonable likelihood of conviction. Finally, the team drafted a 42-page summary connecting all evidence into a seamless logical structure, forming the complete charging foundation for the next procedural step. Daniel Ellwood's trial opened at San Diego Superior Court in early October 2024, attended by prosecutors, defense counsel, forensic experts, and a 12-member jury. The prosecution began by presenting the evidence structure exactly as built in the file, opening with the original 2011 timeline, highlighting Grace's disappearance with no signs of voluntary departure, followed by 2024 recovered digital data on star logs, AI-enhanced cameras, smart meter, revealing time periods where Daniel could not establish an alibi, then the physical evidence group, garage and canvas bag soil matching Oak Canyon type, trace DNA from nylon rope and axe. Consistent with Grace's reference samples, binding marks consistent with seized rope type. Finally, the BAU behavioral report, showing scene staging and crime pattern matching Daniel's skills, schedule, and behavioral profile. The prosecution avoided emotional language, proceeding group by group using only data, charts, minute-by-minute timing, and forensic conclusions to form a continuous chain. After the prosecution's presentation, defense counsel challenged the reliability of reconstruction technology, arguing AI enhancement could introduce image bias on star logs, might be duplicated or corrupted over years, and smart meters could not identify who toggled lights. On forensics, counsel stressed that trace DNA matched only at certain loci and soil type similarity did not prove exclusivity to mission trails. Counsel argued the entire prosecution case was circumstantial, lacking direct evidence of Daniel committing the act. No eyewitness, no confession, no clear blood on the axe. The prosecution countered by calling experts for rebuttal. The DNA expert explained, low locus matches are common in 10-plus-year decomposed samples, and the presence of victim DNA on the nylon rope without any reasonable explanation carried significant legal weight. The forensic soil expert presented micromineralogical analysis, noting Oak Canyon soil's rare silica and microgranite characteristics seldom found in La Mesa, with garage soil matching to a very low probability of random coincidence. The digital reconstruction expert confirmed standard 2011 data recovery protocols, stressing AI only enhanced clarity from original sources under strict technical controls. The BAU representative presented behavioral logic, describing the staging pattern: no theft, no forced entry, no struggle marks, as typical of a known perpetrator, creating a voluntary departure scene, matching contradictions in Daniel's statements and timeline. When expert testimony concluded, the prosecution displayed the final summary chart, the three-layer evidentiary matrix, forensic, digital, behavioral, where each independent layer converged on the same conclusion. Defense continued arguing lack of direct evidence, possible post-departure accident for Grace, potential intermediary soil transfer, and possible timeline errors. The prosecution rebutted by projecting the synchronized timeline. Daniel's vehicle, left per Sunstar, captured on camera, appeared at Mission Trails at the time Grace's death window, 24-48 hours, post-disappearance aligned. No reasonable alternative explanation accounted for the comprehensive match between evidence, data, and Daniel's vehicle locations. When arguments closed, the jury deliberated. They reviewed each evidence group: 2024 camera clearly showing license plate, OnStar proving door opens during contradictory window, garage soil matching scene, trace DNA on rope and axe, bone binding marks consistent with seized rope, BAU typical familiar perpetrator behavioral pattern. Some jurors still weighed the circumstantial nature of forensic evidence, but when placing each fact within the overall chain of time, behavior, and physical items, they concluded no reasonable alternative hypothesis for the perpetrator existed. Deliberation lasted over 3 hours before the jury unanimously found the prosecution's evidence system met the beyond a reasonable doubt threshold. Closing weeks of trial proceedings. 2 weeks after that verdict, the formal sentencing hearing was set at San Diego's Superior Court, where the courtroom was packed with reporters, La Mesa residents, and investigative units involved in the case over more than a decade, all awaiting the moment the case finally moved to legal closure. As the judge entered, the atmosphere grew heavy. Daniel Ellwood was escorted in under close supervision, his expression blank. Before sentencing, the prosecution delivered a final argument on the severity: murder with intentional concealment, scene staging, body disposal, and prolonging the case over a decade. Defense counsel reiterated Daniel's innocence and maintained all forensics were circumstantial, but the argument lacked weight after the unanimous jury verdict. The judge read each count of the indictment, then sentenced Daniel Ellwood to second-degree murder with a term of 25 years to life under California Penal Code, citing aggravating factors of body concealment and deliberate misdirection of the investigation. Daniel showed no strong reaction, only gripping the chair arms tightly, while the prosecution remained composed, and many in the community present wept, as the 13-year disappearance finally had resolution. After sentencing, reactions spread across San Diego County. Residents expressed shock that Daniel, once seen as a model husband with no prior record, was identified as the perpetrator after modern technology peeled back layers of data. Local media highlighted it as a classic example of how cases can be misdirected without full forensics and multi-source analysis capability. Community meetings were held at La Mesa Community Center, where police explained the new investigation process and how 2024 technology solved the case. The release of the 2024 investigative summary report became a focal point, over 110 pages. It detailed 2011 procedural errors, including failure to seize key evidence, incomplete digital device log extraction, no soil analysis, no expanded behavioral pattern search, and especially delayed activation of specialized forensic units. The report noted that if soil forensics or behavioral analysis had been applied early, the case might not have gone cold in 2015. At the same time, it praised the reactivation with modern technology, AI-enhanced video, trace DNA analysis, obsolete digital data timeline reconstruction that pinpointed the suspect and linked evidence in multi-layer models. The DA's office emphasized the case as a national lesson in cold case management, not just archiving files, but readiness for reanalysis with new technology. Investigative training programs and forensic organizations added the Grace Ellwood case to curricula as a case study in classical versus modern forensic interaction. A national forensics conference planned a session on soil analysis as the unlocking factor, while BA used the case to illustrate behavioral analysis in scenes lacking intact original evidence. The La Mesa community viewed the resolution as relief after 13 years, but its impact extended far beyond locally. Other states began reopening old missing persons files to check whether 2024 technology could revive latent traces. In an official statement, San Diego County described the case as proof of the value of persistence, modern forensic science, and legal accountability in prolonged disappearances, while committing to improved missing persons handling to avoid 2011 errors. The Grace Ellwood case, from a stalled file, became a national example of how technology, behavior, and forensics can interconnect to decode a seemingly unsolvable mystery. The story of the Grace Ellwood case, seemingly just a 2011 La Mesa missing persons file, clearly reflects issues Americans still face today: over-reliance on statements instead of objective data, limitations of outdated technology, and the risk that the perpetrator is the closest person. In the story, police initially did not seize the axe, nylon rope, or canvas bag due to no clear crime indicators. This shows how one restrained procedural decision can stall a case for years. Today, with technology more advanced than ever, the lesson is never underestimate small evidence and avoid letting emotion guide situations requiring absolute precision. On star data, smart meters, and AI-enhanced cameras, tools not widespread in 2011, became the keys to reopening the case in 2024. This reminds us of technology's vital role in personal safety. Updating devices, understanding monitoring and data storage capabilities in one's home, car, or phone is not just convenience, but sometimes a means of protecting the right to life. The story also clearly shows that domestic violence, common in the U.S., but often hidden, can occur in the most normal families. Grace's disappearance with no sign of forced entry misled the community by Daniel's stable appearance. Thus, a key lesson is to trust even small unusual behavioral signs in loved ones and not hesitate to seek help from community, authorities, or national hotlines. Finally, the case reinforces belief that persistence from family, police, and community can break time's silence. It reminds us that even a seemingly forgotten disappearance can still find justice if we never give up. Thank you for following this entire gripping case-solving journey. If you want to continue joining stories of breaking cold cases through science and persistence, like the Grace Ellwood case, please hit subscribe so you don't miss out. See you in the next video, where we dive deeper into more mysteries waiting to be solved.